Did you know LA County has to pay $4 billion of settlements for sexual abuse victims? And on top of it, it's not just LA, many other counties in California, as well as school systems, have to pay these kind of settlements as a result of a new law that got passed in 2020. Today, we dive into all of this with John Moorlach, who is against this law. He thinks this law is not good. We also talked to Farid Yaghoubtil, who's a lawyer who has talked to some of these victims, and he thinks this law is good for California.
There are reasons why you don't extend the statute of limitations, even though it's a worthy cause. It's going to have a massive financial impact on school districts.
So I think it was probably an extremely compassionate law that was passed in order to bring forward justice for people who suffered extreme abuse.
John Moorlach has also been doing rankings for Epoch Times newspaper of different cities and counties and school systems to show how they're doing financially. We talked to him about all this, and we also highlight some cities and counties that are doing well in these rankings. I'm Siam Akarami. Welcome to California Insider. John, it's great to have you back on. Welcome back.
Thank you, CMAC. Always great to be with you.
We want to talk to you about a law that has passed in 2020 that actually allowed people to come forward after many years of sexual abuse. Now it's costing the county of LA about $4 billion or more, and school systems in California significantly. Can you tell us more about this? You were there when this law passed, right?
Yeah. In 2013, before I went to serve in Sacramento in the Senate, Senator Bell out of San Jose did a bill that would extend the statute of limitations for those that had suffered childhood sexual abuse. And it sort of captured the Roman Catholic Church and a lot of municipalities where people came out of nowhere and said, okay, I'm filing a suit even though I missed my first opportunity. And I think for the Catholic Church, it was well over $1 billion in settlements. And so in 2018, Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher did almost the same bill, and it went to the floor of the Senate. It was AB 3120, and I was the only senator that stood up and said, this is not a good idea. If you do it again, you're going to have school districts and nonprofits and others that will now have all this exposure to litigation, and their insurance companies probably are not going to cover those incidents, so they'll have to come up with the money themselves. And so I was only one of 2 no votes on that bill, and it went to Governor Jerry Brown's desk. And Governor Brown said, wait a second, we've been here before. We did it in 2013, and there are reasons why you don't extend the statute of limitations, even though it's a worthy cause, because everybody's just going to try to figure out, how to pay for it. You're going to find lawyers doing TV ads. Hey, have you been abused? You're going to find lack of witnesses. You might even find the accused aren't even alive anymore. And how do you fight these issues? So he said, that's why I'm vetoing the bill. And it's one of those veto messages that Governor Brown gave that's lengthy and detailed and is good scholarship. Well, Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher only had to wait a year to 2019, and she would have a new governor in Gavin Newsom. So she did the bill again. This time it was AB 218, and it went through the whole system. And Gavin Newsom maybe his staff didn't show Brown's veto message, but Newsom signed the bill. So now you've extended the statute, and the reverberations, they're starting to occur. The County of Los Angeles recently reported that they're going to have to borrow, through the use of bonds, $4 billion to take care of these settlements that they've agreed to. The Los Angeles Unified School District has agreed to borrow $500 million, $500 million, to pay for the settlements that they agreed to. And that's only one county out of 58, and that's only one school district out of maybe 1,000 in California, if we count every elementary and high school district and community college. And so we don't really know how much more this is going to cost, but it's going to have a massive financial impact on school districts because one, their insurance rates are going to just pop up, and we're already seeing that. And then two, if they do have cases, then they have to settle or at the least have all the legal costs to fight these cases. And so if you call around, you'll find school districts, they're all in the middle of some kind of claim. Palos Verdes School District has about 5 cases going right now. So that's a big burden on schools, which already have very, very tight budgets. So we don't know the full extent of it yet. And then who knows for how long it will take, 20 years, 25 years to pay off these bonds. My goodness, it's just gotten to be a rather onerous financial demand on these entities.
Where do you think this money is going to come from?
Well, it means that if you're going to allocate funds towards these payments, these bond payments, let's say LA Unified, it means that they're going to have to cut expenses somewhere else. So what's to cut when, not to be flippant, but about 90% of a school budget is salaries and benefits of teachers and administrators. So that doesn't give a whole lot of room to pay for these bonds. So it's going to be interesting to see, even if the bonds will sell, whether the school district will also have to pay a high premium for bond insurance so that the buyers will feel like, should anything happen to the district, that at least the insurance would pay for the principal and interest going forward.
Usually bonds are not used for this kind of things, right? They're usually used for things that are infrastructure, that are something you can touch, right?
Right. Usually for new buildings or school improvements. This is like having a second mortgage on your house to pay for your credit card where you just enjoyed a lot of fancy meals. There's nothing to show for it.
Now we go to Farid Yaghoubtil to see what he's saying about this law, because he's been talking to some of these victims.
Governor Newsom had essentially greenlit the law that allowed you to bring forward any cause of action for abuse you suffered, sexual abuse you suffered, by right if you're under the age of 40 or 40 and under, and also within 5 years of recognizing that the harm you suffered, or the harm you suffered when you were younger, attributed to diminishing the arc of your life in any way. So if it harmed you in any way, and you didn't quite recognize it until you're older, this law allowed you to be able to participate in a lawsuit against the entity that caused the harm. So if you're 55 years old now, and you've seen a bunch of different commercials or awareness campaigns about a lawsuit against juvenile hall systems for abuse, a lot of times people who are older, they bury and suppress the harm that they suffered. They don't think about it. But all of a sudden now you see these commercials and you're 55 years old. You can bring forward a cause of action based on the harm that you suffered when you were much younger. So I think it was probably an extremely compassionate law that was passed in order to bring forward justice for people who suffered extreme abuse.
And you have talked to some of these people, you represented some of these people. Can you tell us what does it look like for them?
It's really difficult to understand how abuse of any type can affect a child, and then how that changes the course of that kid's life as they grow into their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, and so on. How it affects their ability to have stable relationships, how they treat their own kids, how the dynamic between them and their own families, their parents, their brothers, their siblings, friends, boyfriends, girlfriends. It affects all of it. Your ability to learn, your educational level, every single aspect of your life, every atom of your life is impacted when you suffer abuse, especially when you're a child. And the younger you are and the more pervasive the abuse is, the more it affected people. And you see a lot of people who, as I always say, the arc of their life was dimmed. Hopefully the funds that a lot of these clients end up getting help them with the services that they need, help them to essentially become better members of society, help them to, put them on a better financial footing, kind of essentially make them active participating members in society. And I think that money is essentially a distribution of funds to these individuals who need it the most. And I understand it's going to take a toll, but it's deserved. It's not money that's not deserved. It's people who suffered for something they were young kids. They were children. Our offices are in downtown. I drive through Skid Row daily. And a lot of the people that we represent are just generally in the practice that we have. We represent people who come from disenfranchised places. And I think sometimes, especially after doing this case, I wonder what percentage of people that are in Skid Row, what percentage of people that are homeless in LA is because of the harm that they suffered when they were younger at the hands of whatever institution they were in. And those people couldn't get their life on the right footing.
Do you think this law is a good law for California to have?
As far as making people who suffered catastrophic harm, yes, 100%. I think you've restored dignity to people who lost it. You gave them a voice, you gave them power to come back and essentially hold someone accountable. And that means a lot to people. A lot of the people that I speak to, a lot of the people that we represent, it wasn't money that they wanted. Much like a lot of lawsuits, it's not, people are not after money. And I think the media paints every single lawsuit as just a money grab. It's not. Many people just want justice. They want the person who hurt them to just say sorry. You know, like they wanted that. They didn't have that. Many people didn't have that for 40 years. They didn't have the voice to go get it. They didn't have the educational background to go do it. They didn't have any of that. And now you have a wave of opportunity for these people to essentially reclaim some degree their dignity and what they lost. So in that sense, I think the law really did exactly what it was intended to do. California has always been at the forefront of that, at the forefront of being able to, like, the legislation that the rest of the country follows. And I think it's unique. Financially, I'm sure this takes a hit, but what it did for people, the dignity it restored, I don't think there's ever been a law that's done that. When you talk about the financial hit to the city, right, and how does that impact overall? I mean, compare that to other social programs that we have, the billions that we spend a year on homelessness, right? And I think if this money is given directly to the people that suffered, I'm hopeful, I'm a believer that they will make their lives better. And as a result, they'll contribute to a better California, a better Los Angeles as a result of it.
And how hard is it to prove these? You are on the legal side. Is it hard to prove these something happened 30 years ago or 40 years ago?
There is documentation. I mean, there is very specific things people know, very specific things that they can describe, names. I genuinely don't believe people would come and make that up. I don't think that that's something that people are gonna, you can't make some of those details up. You just can't. They're very specific to the individual that committed the harm, very specific to the place. The same person has the same story, same name, very graphic descriptions of what happened. And I think it's supported by their story, and their story being consistent with the story of 100 other people who went through the same exact thing.
Do you see there's going to be a lot less of these kind of cases within the county and in the school systems going forward?
This law, bringing accountability, and the accountability can be held against you many, many years down the line, for sure changes things. I think it makes people think twice. I think with awareness, social media, all these other factors out there, I don't know if society's in the same place. I would like to believe we're not. I would like to personally believe that people are not doing those same things over and over again. There are better controls in place. There's more accountability if you do commit a crime like that, to be held accountable. And I think the justice system is stronger. So I'm hopeful that doesn't continue to exist, but maybe in 30 years from now, you'll see another wave of these. I don't know. It's impossible to say. My personal belief is I don't think it's as pervasive as it used to be.
Now let's go back to John Moorlach to talk to him about financial rankings of the cities. Can they really afford to pay for these? You also do financial rankings on cities and counties, and you've done it on states as well. How do you think this will impact these counties and schools financially?
Well, let's start with the schools. The county of Los Angeles has 7980 school districts. I say 7980 because one of the districts in 2020 moved to be in the jurisdiction of Orange County. They were on the border of La Habra. Out of those 79 districts, the LA Unified is near the bottom. So they have one of the worst per capitas of all the school districts just in Los Angeles County. And for those that are here nationally watching, LA County is large. It is larger than 2 states and kind of close in size to Connecticut, I believe is. So it's a big area, but it's still not a state, but it's part of California. So that's why we have so many districts there. So if they're already really tight financially with pension liabilities, and we call it other post-employment benefit liabilities. OPEB is the acronym that we use, but it's for retiree medical. So the teachers at Los Angeles Unified will receive lifetime medical benefits. Well, you have to get an actuary to determine what that could be. And their original assumptions based on the factors that were available showed that it was probably $15 billion just to pay for all these medical bills going forward for their retirees. So LA Unified is sort of, in a tight position. The good news is it has been trying to move up the rankings and is done well, but this $500 million bond issue and trying to make the payments is going to be rather onerous. And there's other subtle things like enrollment is down. How will that impact? So that's where the rankings come in. They kind of give you a warning. What school districts should we be watching? What cities should we be watching? What counties should we be watching? LA County, out of 58 counties, is a little further down at the bottom as well. So a $4 billion bond is not going to help their situation when you add that kind of debt to the balance sheet. So it's like a temperature gauge. You got to say, okay, who's in trouble? What kind of things should you be doing or thinking? I gave a speech recently to a little town near the city of Orange. And the city of Orange has just received a report from Grant Thornton, a CPA firm, that if they don't turn around their situation, they're looking at Chapter 9 bankruptcy in 3 years. So that was the big talk. What about the city of Orange? But you could see from the rankings that city of Orange has been dropping. And there are things a city or a county or a state can do to build some financial principles.
So you have been working on this, and it's not easy to get these financials. Can you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, it's amazing how many states, for example, don't issue their audited financial statements before they prepare the next year's budget. So the state of California should get its 2024 audited completed by December of 2024. So here we are in almost the fall of 2025, and they still have not issued their audited financial statements. But the budget was approved in June of 2025. So we have a number of states, Illinois, now Nevada, where they just can't seem to get things organized and completed in a timely manner. And because I'm kind of stubborn, I kind of like to wait till I get all 50 states so that we don't have to say, okay, well, here's the rankings based on last year's numbers, because we didn't get the current year's numbers. And then 5 months later have to redo it and say, okay, we have to make some adjustments because we finally got the financial statement. So I apologize for that, but you've just put the 50 states for June. Most of the states have a June year, and most municipalities do. And we just put those up for the year 2023. But they are actual numbers.
2024 is still not available, right?
Right. We still have about 6 states we're waiting for.
And the way you do this is you look at how much money they have, how much assets they have, and how much liabilities they have, and then you find out what's the leftover. Is it negative or positive? And per each resident, what's that number, right?
Right.
And you have been doing this on counties too in California, right?
I started back in 2012. I found myself being the chairman of the board of supervisors for Orange County for the second time. And the county of Orange had gone through a bankruptcy, filing a Chapter 9 bankruptcy, filing at the time the largest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history. And we lost roughly about $1.7 billion based on an investment strategy that the county treasurer had implemented that blew up. And then in 2008, we had the liquidity crisis. And so by the time I was chair in 2008, which was really difficult, we had to lay off 1,000 employees. It was that,
Wow.
The economic downturn was that severe. And so in 2012, I thought, what do I do to explain, that maybe we're not ready yet to give raises, and how do we deal with the bargaining units? So that's when I went and I tried to get all of the 57 other counties and get their financial statements, but I did it for the year 2010, so I could at least have something, because waiting for the 2011 and 2012. So I was able to get all of them except for one. Modoc County didn't have theirs completed, so I run into this way back when. And I called them and they said, well, the auditor controller's not available, but could you give us a toll-free number to call you back, because we are not permitted to make long distance calls.
Wow.
See, this is back when, you got charged for long distance calls. It was like, oh my goodness. But it showed that Orange County was in 46th place out of 58 counties. And Orange County nationally is recognized as a very, quote unquote, wealthy county. We have wealthy residents, we're coastal, we're supposed to be, we're supposed to have our act together. So we were really criticized. So we used that and said, okay, look, we're still near the bottom. We've got to work our way up. So we've implemented a lot of strategies. So I'm proud to say that a lot of the things that I did when I was supervisor that my colleagues voted with me on, we're now up to like 16th place out of 58
Wow.
counties. We've really moved, but you had to make some very difficult financial decisions and policy changes for the retiree medical, for the pensions, and so it takes a proactive approach.
And it's one of those things you usually don't get credit for as a government official, right? Unless people see these rankings, right? Because you're usually you're not spending as much, right?
Yeah. As an elected official, you usually don't get nice cards, thank you cards from taxpayers saying, hey, thanks, you did a good job. Look what, no, I don't, I don't get those. But, now that I'm a little older and I've served as a supervisor and I've served as a state senator, it's kind of nice to reflect. But when you look at the hard data, you can kind of say, hey, look, you did make a positive impact.
And some cities are looking at your rankings and counties, and some are proud of it for doing really well, and some other ones are using it to move up, right? Can you tell us more about that?
Well, yeah, I just had the chance to talk to a city manager. He said, your rankings really helped in helping us prioritize addressing the retiree medical costs. And he started citing numbers. And he said, it was really helpful to have your information so I could communicate with the city council members and the residents. And so, I get other council members that will call and say, when are those rankings coming out? I want to see how my city's doing, So it is kind of fun to see that, you get a few reactions here and there, and you get some good feedback.
For our audience, we're going to leave a few of links that you're doing the rankings for different schools, different counties, and different cities, so people can find their city and county and see how each one is doing. And we're going to have the states too. If they're out of California, they can see how their state is doing. Now, in this process, have you seen some cities that have worked hard to get up the ranks?
Yeah, locally here at Orange County, from 2017, the city of Newport Beach was like 32nd place out of 34 cities. But now
it's a wealthy city, right? It's a very wealthy city.
You would think it is. I mean, it's got plenty of yachts, moored in its wonderful harbor. But if you're not careful with giving pension benefits and other employee benefits, you could find yourself in an awkward situation, which is where Newport Beach found itself. And it had to develop some principles of what are we going to do to balance the budget? What if we have revenues in excess of expenditures? What do we do with the surpluses? How do we allocate them? And they were very specific, like half goes to public works, the other half goes to pay down the pension. And they just sort of built some formulas. They said, this is what we're going to do. Every year we're going to address these specific issues. And if we're going to do public works, we won't borrow. We're just going to save the money and get ready for it. And so they've been slowly moving up every year, up the rankings. And it's really amazing because we're talking a period where in Newport Beach you have term limits. So you have turnover of city council members, but yet the successors are following their predecessors with the same principles. So you can see that Newport Beach is a city that has sort of set an agenda and is now slowly, methodically working up the ranks. And yeah, now they're above zero, which is really great.
So they're in a positive territory.
Right. Most entities, you have assets minus your liabilities equals owner's equity, and you want that to be positive. Zero or higher.
At least positive.
Otherwise, you're like a bankruptcy candidate, right? So it's been a really fun story to tell. Newport Beach is.
And how are they doing now? What rank are they?
From 2017 to 2024, they've moved from 32nd place to 17th place. So it's a good success story, and it's a good model for because you have a lot of people that want to run for public office, and you want to give them some guidance on how to address the budget, how to address the financial policies of a city going forward. Epoch Times provides the rankings, focused mostly on the California, and then the 50 states, but it gives your subscribers an opportunity to see, how we're doing. If they live in another state, they can just grab the financials and do the same simple math, grab the unrestricted net position and divide it by the population and see what your per capita is and how would it fit in. And if it's a big negative number, how do you get more involved?
Now we're going to go to the city of Newport Beach, to the mayor, Joe Stapleton, to see what's happening there, what they're doing that is helping them move up in the rankings over the last decade. Can you tell us what's happening in Newport that's causing you guys to go up in the financial ranking?
Of course, and I appreciate you and Epoch Times for creating awareness on these issues. Not a lot of people like to talk about municipal finance, but John Moorlach being at the top of that mountain, I want to aspire to be there, but I love all things related to financial planning and financial responsibility. And I think when you look at a city like Newport Beach, we're benefactors of generations of strong fiscal conservative politics in our community. So whether it's elected officials or residents, they've demanded the best out of all of us. So I am now the most recent leader when it comes to running the finance committee and being the mayor of what I consider one of the greatest cities of Newport Beach. But a city like Newport doesn't get to where it is by accident. So climbing up in these rankings over the last decade is a lot to do with long-term financial planning. So for me personally, a money manager, I like to equate a lot of things to my personal business that I put into municipal finance. And a lot of it is just financial planning 101. Spend less, bring in more. That's the keys to budget planning and surplus, right? So I think a lot of cities are so short-sighted, whereas Newport Beach has been a benefactor of generations of long-term planning.
Can you tell us about this long-term planning? How does it work?
A lot of municipalities might be paying attention to this, or residents in other communities. Oftentimes you hear about elected officials talking about a budget, and their budget cycle might be 12 months or 24 months. The city of Newport Beach runs on a 20-year budget cycle. So I'm not kidding. We are planning now even further when you talk about our facilities and finance plan and some of our beaches, harbor master planning. We're going out sometimes 100 years when we're talking about fiscal planning for big projects or infrastructure needs. So I think a lot of times people get bogged down into these 1 or 2 year budget cycles. One of our biggest competitive advantages when you look at this, the entire state of California, comparing amongst our peers, is we're just out long term. This long-term 20-year planning allows us to make decisions today that will help benefit those 20 years from now.
Can you give us some examples of the decisions you're making today that's going to help
Yeah, I mean, let's take a fire truck, for example. A fire truck might cost $1 million. Well, if we need to replace our fire truck in the next 10 years, we're not going to wait 9.5 years and the fire department come to us and say, hey, we need to replace this fire truck, and we're going to have to go find $1 million. Every year, we're going to allocate some of that budget from our fire department into the general fund budget to then save into the facilities finance plan every year. So by the time that 10 years gets there, the money's already saved. So we need to go purchase that fire truck. We've been planning that for the last decade. And same when it comes to improvements on our infrastructure, whether it's buildings, big parks projects. These are things we've been planning on for potentially decades.
Before we move forward with the rest of this interview, let's take a look at the key headlines this week at the Epoch Times newspaper on the California section. State lawmakers wrapped up their session and about 1,200 bills passed in California. Last year, the governor's office vetoed about 15.7% of these bills. We'll see which ones would get vetoed this time. Another key headline was that cap and trade was extended till 2045, and now it's called cap and invest. The idea is that the state would charge fees for polluters, for companies that have emissions, and then invest these funds into green initiatives. There could be a major change for faith-based homeless housing, and some of these faith-based homeless housing are the most popular and the most successful in the state. Now they might be getting a lot more government funding. There's a new bill in California that is training law enforcement on transnational repression, essentially teaching law enforcement how to deal with foreign governments coming here and doing their own operations. One of these examples is the Chinese Communist Party. And as you know, we are a sponsor of Shenyun, and Shenyun as a show has faced a lot of challenges in the US because the Chinese Communist Party is coming after them. They're threatening sometimes the theaters, they're having bomb threats, and this is one of the examples that this bill would cover in California. There is a lot more headlines in this newspaper. It's not just a newspaper, there's a 24/7 platform with many news articles. These issues we cover are multifaceted. We have a lot of voices in these articles. We have more voices than we have on the show. Make sure to get the newspaper subscription right now. You'll be surprised by the quality of journalism that we have in this paper. It's very unique. Now let's go see the rest of the episode. And you guys have been paying some of your debt. Can you tell us about that?
I think the elephant in the room when you talk about any municipalities, especially these rankings that Moorlach puts together, is the unfunded pension liability. And the city of Newport Beach, we're blessed with a lot of things, but when it comes to long-term planning and our reserves, the money that we're paying additional towards the normal cost of our unfunded pension liability, it's the tune of about $45 million a year. And that takes away from other things. And you and I have spoken offline about this, but I'm not going to get credit for being fiscally responsible when it comes to paying down unfunded pension liability, but it's the right thing to do. There's too many municipalities that are using debt obligation bonds or finding other ways to then pay off debt to bring on more debt. For us, we're on a track to have this debt paid off in 7 years. A future city council will have an additional $45 million a year to plan for infrastructure or other needs the community is looking for outside of paying down this unfunded pension liability.
How did you get to a point where you're responsible financially?
I think it's a culture from the community. I mean, you'd have to go back 20, 30, 40, 50 years to really uncover that. But I think the reality is that Newport's been founded on this fiscal responsibility and a culture of residents demanding the best of the best from its elected officials. So you've seen these elected officials, and we've got a lot of residents that are intimately involved. So you talk about things, what other municipalities could do, what other cities could do when it comes to really owning some of this fiscal responsibility in nature. It's getting residents involved. We talk about a finance committee. I know you and I have spoken about this in the past, but our finance committee, which I served on before I was ever elected to public office, allows 4 residents to be appointed from city council to serve on a committee where they got their hands in the decision-making of the forward progress of the city when it comes to the fiscal nature of what we do. And there's only 3 city council members on that committee. So the residents outweigh the council members.
So they can vote for the decision?
Yeah. So when you talk about, for example, when we're looking at our budget planning, we're 6 months out before the budget ever lands on the desk of council to vote on. And we are having different departments into our finance committee meetings every month, doing a deep dive into where their money is being spent, how's it best suited for residents, how it's helping the community. So you got all these residents that are really diving into that. And this has been going on for, probably 20 years now. And it allows the public to get more invested in what's happening in the city. And I think a lot of municipalities and a lot of residents in other communities probably just bury the head in the sand because they're trying to pay their bills and try to get through their lives and raise families. And the fiscal nature of my community might not be the biggest thing. But when you talk about those communities, even surrounding neighboring communities of ours in Newport, when you start missing your budget and you start going to a deficit, some of the first things that start getting cut are resources to first responders. So when you talk about defunding police, you talk about fire and our city lifeguards as well. I get nervous as unfunded pension liabilities increase and get bigger and bigger, and other municipalities are making decisions where they might be taking on one-time capital and using it for long-term expenses and taking on long-term debt, which I think is wrong. And we see this happening all the time, where like COVID money, for example. A city might receive some COVID money and they might use that for long-term obligations.
So they give raises or they do other things
Labor
that
costs,
are like
pension. Yeah, those are all things that you have to take.
that they don't have the money to do.
Because it's a one-time investment. It's COVID money, right? Or it's federal one-time transportation money, whatever it is. But you find when you get into labor negotiation, contracts, and everything else, sometimes this one-time money is spent for long-term needs, and that one-time money stops, and now these municipalities are stuck with these large budgets, and the revenue is not there, so they got to start dipping into their reserves, and now they got a deficit. So crime knows no borders. So if other communities are spending less on their public safety, that's going to bleed over into our communities. So now we're continuing to have to spend more on first responders and public safety as well.
So you mentioned your residents are involved. Can you give us more examples of how do they get involved?
Yeah, I think like take for example like our aviation committee. We just went out on council and we restructured our aviation committee. It's got 5 members at large in the community that are willing to serve on this. I think we had 20 some applications of people who are really well qualified that hit every benchmark that we asked them to include on their applications. And we had a really hard time selecting 5 people because they were all excellent candidates. So I think a lot of cities are blessed with residents who are willing to volunteer their time, who are experts in their field, and Newport Beach is no stranger to that. So we've got 5 experts in the aviation. We got attorneys, pilots, general aviation, private aviation. We've got individuals that are willing to serve on this committee, and that happens to our Parks Commission, our Harbor Commission, our Finance Commission, planning. It's remarkable when we go out there to ask people to serve, how many people are willing to step up and raise their hand.
So a lot of qualified people come and they want to help out.
Yeah.
So you have to pick. It's hard to make.
Yeah, the hardest part is actually getting down to the select. That's one of the hardest things I've figured on council is having to go out in the community and say, okay, we need 5 people that are willing to step up and serve, and we get so many qualified candidates that we're like, man, how are we going to get down to 5? Because you end up, somebody's feelings are going to be hurt, obviously, but the reality is most communities I think are blessed with that.
And how does that help you guys?
Oh, look, on council, it's like anything in government, the higher you go, the more decisions you have to make, right? So when you're sitting there as a mayor of a city like Newport, we've got beaches, we've got parks, we've got libraries, we've got police, we've got fire, we've got lifeguards. There's thousands of things you have to be an expert on when it comes to planning in a city, when it's the building department, the finance department, public works, utilities. The reality is when you have a commission of residents who have a body that we can go to and say, here's a problem we have in the community. For the harbor example, we want to do some dredging. And that was a $20 million project, right? 50% funded by the federal government, 50% funded by the city of Newport. We sent it through our harbor commission, where we have 7 residents who are all experts in the harbor, whether it's an industry or something they're passionate about. And it spent months going through the harbor commission. So by the time it gets to the city council, it's been vetted by one of our committees and one of our commissions. So we get there and we can go through and do our homework and make an educated decision. So we're blessed where we have avenues we can send projects through and different ideas, and then it'll bubble its way to the top when we get to make a final vote on it. And it gives residents an opportunity to go out there and voice their opinion on what they think in different committees along the way.
And this is not a paid job that you guys have. Like most of the city councils and mayors, like you guys are not full-time, right? This is a difficult...
Oh, we're full-time, but we're not paid full-time. No. I mean, I think my stipend as the mayor is $1,400 a month. Now, I talk about ambition in a city like Newport Beach. You have to have ambition to live in a city like Newport and most cities in California at this point. The reality is $1,400 a month is not going to pay for my quality of life to live in a city like Newport. So I am gifted. I have a wealth management practice that I started almost 10 years ago. We're now managing upwards of $1 billion. That provides me the lifestyle to live in a city like Newport Beach. But 60 hours a week in my office and 40 hours a week being the mayor of Newport. But I tell people, C-Mac, there's not enough money to pay me to be the mayor. I do it because I love the city and I want to be part of the legacy when it comes to leadership and protecting quality of life for everybody in our community.
You mentioned that you're planning for many years,
Yeah,
a few decades
yeah.
ahead. How do you make sure that that happens? Like the next
Yeah.
leaders will come in and do the same as you guys are doing.
For oftentimes, I got involved in the city. I first joined the Chamber of Commerce in 2008. And when I started getting more involved in the city, there were only 2 of us under 40 in the entire community that were involved in things that were happening in the city. So what I really challenged myself with, one of the things I'm really passionate about is activating the next generation in community service. So what I was finding is who better to help make decisions than a generation that's going to feel the impact for decades to come, right? And what I realized is there was this entire generation that was hungry and wanted to serve, they just didn't have a platform. So I got together with a few others. We launched the Newport Beach Foundation to what it is today. We've got what we call a Distinguished Citizen Program. It's a 5-week course. We do one in the fall, one in the spring. We bring in every department head. I come in as the mayor, the city manager, the police chief, the fire chief, business leaders in the community, and everyone spends a couple hours a night for 5 weeks every Wednesday night and gets more entrenched in what's going on behind the scenes. We've graduated over 350 of these next generation through this program. And now that we are into this, we have over 70 of them who have been appointed and serving in the city in some kind of capacity. Whether that's the Planning Commission, the Harbor Commission, the Police Foundation, the Fire Foundation was born out of this organization. It's incredible to see the fingerprints all through the community for this next generation. The legacy members in the community are still there. It's almost like this mentorship and helping say, hey, we've made Newport what it is. It's your job to keep Newport Newport. So we're using that legacy generation to help us continue to foster community development and support through the next generation.
Joe Stapleton, Mayor of Newport, it was great to have you in California.
Thank you,
Insider.
C-Mac. I really appreciate it. A lot of fun.
Let us know what you think of this episode. You can always comment or email us. You can email me at siamak@californiainsider.com. And when you comment, make sure you consider everybody. We want to bring people together from all parts of California, all sides, to make things better. I'm Siamak Khorrami. This is California Insider, and we'll see you next time.